Hey, this is the PowerPoint we've been waiting for. That's right. It's the last one in the Black Belt course. Okay, we're going to be talking about design for Six Sigma. Um, this includes processes. In fact, I even got it bold in the bullets here. Um, 70 to 90% of all the quality problems that a product has, to include processes, are because of poor design. And this has been done study after study. And the problem is a lot of times they do financial metrics, return on net assets, which is net income over investments. RONA is what they call that. Um, I worked for a company that paid bonuses based on RONA. So what they would do is they'd focus on the investment part. So what they had are machines like 30, 40, 50 years old, buildings that were 30, 40, 50 years old that basically had no value. So the denominator essentially went down to zero. The only investment we had was basically the land we were on. So any net income or anything, as long as it's positive, divided by zero, RONA goes to almost infinity, in theory to infinity. Well, they're paying at 200, 300% RONA. The trouble with that is there was about 500 employees making about $120 million in product. Compared to our competitors that had maybe 500 employees putting out about $700 million in product. We never modernized our processes. All right. New, Cooper, a guy named Cooper said, well, new products account for 40% of sales and 46% of the profit. He didn't go into the process part of it, but I'm assuming that if you can get your process down to where you have just a little bit of labor and very efficient, uh, it'll account for a big part of your production. Okay, but we'll talk a bit about Cooper later. Again, designing processes included not just product, but also processes. And this works for service industry and in manufacturing. And you don't want to stray too far beyond your abilities. This a lot of times called core competencies, right? And this is the strength of the company's abilities. So if we're good at financial planning, um, we might not want to venture into doing fund management or something like that. We stay at what we're good at, and a lot of companies have gotten in a lot of trouble trying to get away from things that they're not expertise at. Um, Again, I'm gonna go with Elon Musk. Sometimes it works out though. You got SpaceX. Sometimes it doesn't. Again, I'm looking real hard at Tesla. Right? Stay with your abilities, your core competencies. This is this was first categorized by Russ now, I think is who did it. Um, this is how you get a new product or new service or process, right? And he says there's actually two parts. There's a fuzzy front end where you generate ideas and you start picking through it and analyzing it. And then you actually get into the new product development. Um, the fuzzy front end, there's a concept study. This is where you know that those 13 things that Cooper pointed out. You go in, if you don't know the answer to some of those, you're going to do a concept study and find out the answers. You fill in the unknowns, whether the technology or the processes exist. And then you also want to do a feasibility study, um, find out the limitations of the concept, right? Um, see if it's even worth doing. And then you get into the new product development stage. And this is where you start getting the specification. You analyze the needs of the customers and where the markets are. Start forming your teams. And you get your stage gate. And we'll talk about that later. And then you want maintenance. What do you do after you make this thing? How are you going to fix it? And then you want to learn from this thing, right? Continuous learning. Um, You'd be surprised how many companies keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. But this is fuzzy front end product development, and there's a video in the readings on this. The stage gate process. This is a process used by a lot of companies. Basically, you have to get. It's like an obstacle course. You got to get through one stage before you can move on to the next one. So I found this image on the internet. It's got three companies, Xerox, Exxon, and Calcomp. I think Calcomp's actually bankrupt. They make printers and plotters and things like that. So basically, the stages most companies have to address is get an idea, prove it works, financial assessment, develop and test, launch, scale up production, launch, and then you got to support the product, and then you got to learn from it. And these are the way Xerox, Exxon, and Calcomp does it. Calcomp might want to go back and look how they do their financial assessments and continuous learning, um, and also where they get their ideas from. I think they're an OEM plotter, uh, but the same thing for services too, right? Um, just take a second to look at this, and it should just kind of make sense, right? Cost reduction. Um, I'm going to go back to TVs again. I was watching some game shows from the 1980s, 1970s, and one of the big prizes is a 19-inch color TV, right? Uh, all for $720, right? And that was a great buy back then, right? Now I look at what I can get for $720. My goodness, the size of the TV. In fact, I've got one that's twice as big for less than for about $115. I got on Black Friday. Cost reductions. We come to expect that things will be cheaper later on. I almost hate to buy any new electronics because I know one is going to be obsolete, and second thing is probably going to be cheaper later on. Cost reductions. Oh, it blows my mind, by the way, that I just bought a toaster last Black Friday for $5. It's just incredible, just incredible. But that's what we come to expect. So what Six Sigma tools should we be using during the product development? Um, Basically all of them, right? That's what I'm going to say. First thing you look at is the project charter, because that project charter should understand what is critical for quality and who the external customers, and internal customers, and what they expect from you. We talked about the FEMA. Very important. This is where you get it on paper and try to anticipate the problems. You're going to do your design of experiments to see what the best combination, make this thing as robust as possible. We got all kinds of statistical tests to prove or disprove any of our theories and stuff. Again, we don't want any Greek science. We want all facts, management by facts. So then we want to verify the process or the product, and we want to make sure we use statistical process control. And finally, one of the big ones for product development is cost reductions, lean, lean. And there's about 12 things there that we can apply. And you also, the soft skills, the teaming, uh, the basically getting the job done, getting the synergy out of this. You don't want any super chickens. A guy named Treff came up with this IDOV model for process or for product development or process development. First thing you want to do is identify. This is your team charter, your FEMA, and you benchmark other things. And then you want to get into your design. You got to develop what's critical to quality. What are the requirements? Basically, the specs on this thing. You develop the alternatives, evaluate, select, optimize. Use the process capability information. You do your tolerancing, I think called statistical tolerancing. How much is this going to vary? Robust design and other Six Sigma tools, and validate. That's where you test and validate the design. It should be kind of clear how Six Sigma fits into this whole thing. And another model. This was actually developed by Simon, and he tried to stay close to the Six Sigma DMAIC process. So the first thing I do is define what is the project goals, what are the customer needs. Again, this is kind of like the project charter. Measure, measure and determine the customer needs and do the specifications, right? This is where you say, what am I going to make? Analyze the process to make sure you can meet those needs, right? Again, it's focused on the process here, right? And you develop the process details to meet those needs, right? Verify and validate the design performance. Again, this is you should see Six Sigma all through this thing. I like this one because it focuses on the process to meet the design. It's the design of the process, right? More than the design of the product. Here's another one that's basically process oriented. It's called the DMA DOV. I first heard about from Pro Object. Basically wanted to find the project, what is the goal, what are the specifications on the project. Then you measure the opportunity. Again, you look at what's valued to the customer. You look at you benchmark your competition and the rest of the industry. You're going to analyze the options. Again, will meet those needs of the customer. And you want to think outside the box on this thing, right? Then you design the process. You get a very detailed process, and you do some experiments to make sure that that the design will meet the customer needs. And optimize. The way you're doing it now is probably the worst way it'll ever be made. So you want to again think outside the box and see if there's a different way to make this thing, right? You redesign the process to meet the specifications. You need to think Kaizen here, okay? And then you want to verify, is it meeting the customer needs? Or do we need to come up with a new process altogether? DMA, DOV. So this is what an engineer is going to do in the design process. French is actually the name of the guy that came up with this. He's a British guy, so it's not named after the country. But basically, the engineer is going to say, well, what do you need? He's going to sit there and he's going to pick at it and analyze the problem. And he's going to come up with a statement. All right, this is the way I see it. And he's going to assemble his team and stuff, and they're going to do a conceptual design. This is think of how we're going to approach that. And from that, they then select their different schemes. And then they start embodying the disease. This is where they start looking at papers, drawing up numbers, doing the analysis. And then they do the detailing. Actually, it's detailing. They dispelled it here in this image. But they start detailing the things. And they start coming up with the working drawings and stuff like that. And then he says, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can make this thing. But this is the engineer's role in a design of a process or product. So what characteristics are we going to focus on? Well, um, pick one of the following list, right? Or which ones are critical. So you got safety, quality, reliability that's going to last, testability. You can tell if it's broken, manufacturability. Can you even make the silly thing? How easy is it to assemble? Where's it going to be used? What kind of environment? I was actually in a design project where we are trying to get a pump for the International Space Station, which is kind of cool. Um, Serviceability. If you know, my friend had a car, the water pump went out, and I couldn't figure out how to change that water pump. You literally had to pull the engine to get to the water pump, right? Um, Not a good design. Maintainability, is it easy to keep going? Is it friendly? Is something you do? I got my mother a Roku system for her TV, and the thing that made me choose that is I looked at the remote, and there are about 6 buttons she can press and get everything she needs. Right, very friendly. Appearance. Um, my wife buys cars by what color they are and how they look. Right, it's important to some people. Packaging, of course. Uh, there's actually an award for the best packaging. What features do you have? And what's the lead time on how fast can we get this thing to market? All of these things designed for X, but you pick the X, and there they are. Let's talk about a design that directly addresses processes. This was first basically Taguchi's idea. Um, and I won't get into the history, but it's an incredible history, 1950s or so. So robust design of processes. The whole approach of this thing is you got some kind of signal, something coming into a process, right? These are your inputs, right? And during that process, you got what's called control factors. These are the things that you have directly control of: speed and feed, uh, your phone system and stuff. But you also get things like noise factors, temperature, humidity, um, tool variation. This is called noise because you're not controlling it, but it's something you got to live with. But in the end, you want this thing to spit out the response. You want that response to be something you can very, very much what the customer wants. You meet the customer requirements. This is robust design of processes. So again, robust design. First thing you want to know is concept. What kind of process are you even going to use, right, to make this product or service? And parameter. What we mean by parameter is what components or what techniques are you going to use, and this is where you start looking at the cost too. You want a good rule of thumb: try the cheapest way first, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't work well, then you can move on to the next step, and you look at the tolerances. Well, what kind of tolerances do I have to hold? And then you start looking for the more expensive ones, and finally get into the functional requirements. And this is you got to meet two things. One, you want to make sure it meets the customer requirements or the design parameters, right? Or is it at the cheapest cost, right? Or not or, and is it at the cheapest cost? In other words, is it optimized? You're getting the best, I'm going to use the word value for what you just designed, right? The most for your money. This is a functional requirement. Okay, so here comes the parameter design. What do we mean by that? Well, you're going to determine your signals. This is your input signal. This is stuff you control: speed, feed, type of coolant. Um, and you also got the noise factors, temperature, humidity, if you're not controlling that, dust, whatever it may be, right? Tools, uh, cheap age of the tool variation, things like that. So what you want to do is you want to control as many of those factors as possible. You're going to do a DOE, okay? Well, after your DOE, you're going to get the results, and you want to calculate what's called a signal-to-noise ratio. Um, this was actually this is a course in itself, and I'm not going to cover it too much, but there's the equation for that. And if you're interested in that, contact me on my email, and I'll be glad to go over it with you a bit. I kept all the books from when I had to learn this stuff. But you want that signal-to-noise ratio, and the higher it is, the better, right? So we'll talk later if you want to, but otherwise, this is as far as I'm going to go into it. So then the last thing we want to do is determine the optimal conditions, and that's going to be based on our results on the DOE. And after we get that, set it at production, and then we just want to verify that we did get it right. And that's robust design parameters. It sounds simple, but it's actually quite a bit of work, but up front, but it pays big dividends down the road. So let's do an example of this thing. All right, so we got our controllable factors, and this is an automotive component. So we got interference, connector wall thickness, insertion depth, percent adhesive, and we got three levels: low, medium, high, thin, medium, thick. And I think this is an actual study, and I won't get into what those factors are, but we can control them. And then we got our noise factors, right? We're just going to do two levels of this thing. One is the time for this thing to set, the temperature, and the relative humidity. And that's a two level. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to merge these two things into an orthogonal array. And let's see what that looks like. So this is our orthogonal array. And what you got, that L8 array, that's our noise factors. You can see we got the time in there, we got the temperature, we got relative humidity. And down on the left side there, we got our controllable factors, the interference, wall thickness, depth, and percent adhesive. And we combine this thing. It's just like playing the old battleship game, right? So we're going to run basically 9 different sets of these tests under the different conditions and see which one is more robust, okay? So as we run that, we record our response, right? And since we're only going to control those things on the left, we're going to see which one does best under the conditions of all the noises, right? So in this case, if higher is better, right, we would look at that one that has a 22.8 average, right? That'd probably be our first shot out of this. This is how we're going to set our parameters. So we would want our interference to be medium, our wall thickness to be medium, our insertion depth should be deep, our percent adhesive should be low, and that'll give us our best result under a variety of conditions, under a variety of the noise. Take a second to look at this thing. And from there, then, we can actually fine-tune this thing. So instead of 100, well, we'll just fine-tune it on the things we can control to see if we can get even better. We'll bounce around those things and do our evop activities. Well, this is a slide we've been looking for, right? So this is the last slide in the course. Contact me if you have any questions. You're working on a project. Share those projects with me. I'll be glad to have some, talk about it or discuss it, and be part of the team. Again, if you have trouble, have any troubles, I want you to contact me. You've got my email address. Good luck with everything. Enjoy it. Thanks.